when money is going out the door and we're tearing things apart, there's a higher likelihood that we are going to misunderwrite that whole part of the value add process. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. In this week's episode, I'm going to share what we define as the Holy Grail multifamily deal in our business and talk about how you identify a Holy Grail deal. What are the attributes of one and what makes a deal fit that description? And we have this very clearly defined in our business. And this is really an episode for a lot of the LPs out there that want to look at potential passive investments through this lens of what we define as the Holy Grail deal, or active investors out there who just want to more accurately define what they're looking for from a criteria standpoint. Obviously, we do deals that fall outside of what what I'm going to describe here as our perfect deal, our Holy Grail deal. But it's very helpful when you recognize one because it just allows you to pursue it a little bit more aggressively, understanding that the risk profile associated with it is very different than the alternative. And again, I'm going to get into that. Now, before I actually share what we define as our Holy Grail deal, talk about the attributes of one, want to remind everybody that we're still raising capital for our 72-unit deal, Sterling Realty Apartments. This is going to be live until late October, early November in terms of how long we're keeping this capital raise open for. So if you'd like to learn more about it, funny enough, this deal actually does fit the mold of what I'm about to describe. It is a Holy Grail deal for us, and you're going to learn why in just a moment as I talk about how we define these deals in our business and within the overall spectrum of the deals that you can do as a multifamily investor. But again, if you want to learn more about it, click the link in the description to be taken to the deal room, link in the show notes, I should say. Direct to seller deal, Class B, long-term mom and pop owner, creating a ton of value through operations here. A very compelling investment opportunity for those looking for a high cash flow deal, high floor in terms of minimal downside. This is a 506C syndication, open to accredited investors only. But if you want to go and download the OM, the PPM, etc., click the link in the show notes. Now, let's talk about Holy Grail deals in multifamily. Going to talk about it at a high level, and then I'm going to share some very specific things that you should look out for when evaluating deals to see how closely it fits this mold. But fundamentally, what I'm describing here is a multifamily deal, a value-add multifamily deal, where the vast majority of the NOI increase comes from management upgrades and not through an extensive renovation plan or through renovations in general. Now, why do we like this? When we are spending money on construction and when money is going out the door and we're tearing things apart and we're breaking things and we're swinging hammers and we're doing all of that, there's a higher likelihood that we are going to misunderwrite that whole part of the value add process. And I'm going to speak very broadly here. Regardless of the construction you're doing, it's possible and oftentimes likely that you're going to go over budget, even when you're doing a small unit turn scope versus or a large one. I mean, it's anytime construction is introduced into the equation, risk increases as a very simplistic baseline factual statement. Because again, you're sending money out the door and you're doing your best on the front end to underwrite it, but you're never going to get it exactly. So again, there's always a spectrum to this stuff, right? There's light value adds, there's moderate, there's heavy, there's total redevelopment projects, each carrying a different level of construction budget, a different level of scope of work, etc. But long story short, we want the vast majority of our compensation, and compensation being what we're doing as an investor, to come through implementation of management, professionalizing management, implementation of management changes, doing a better job leasing, doing a better job answering maintenance calls, doing a better job identifying the market rents for a specific unit and leasing those units at market rent. Because fundamentally what's happening when you are creating value through management improvements or through optimizing a rent roll, which again, all of that stuff sits under management value add, we're being paid for our experience and our knowledge, not for swinging a hammer and not for spending money. And that's a very important distinction. Now, I don't know, somebody listening to this might be, well, you're still going to spend some money if you're improving the quality of the management. Maybe you're spending a little bit more on your property management company because you're hiring a better one. Maybe you're, I don't know, offering some kind of concierge service and there's a change to the P&L. Yes, okay, that's true. But it's not a basis change when you close the property. You're not spending money on capitalized expenses on CapEx. Oftentimes you have to do one for the other to take place, right? And I think that's going to be the other argument from somebody listening to this, right? Well, if I want to increase the quality of my management or increase the rents, I got to go out there and spend money on the units and on the interiors and on the common areas. Yes, again, that can be true. What I'm just doing here is describing the Holy Grail deal and describing the lens in which you need to evaluate deals to see how closely it fits. And fundamentally, what we want to look for is a deal where the vast majority of the value we're creating is through management improvements and through things that we're doing that are outside of spending money on CapEx, right? And the vast majority of deals have a combination of both. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But we want the vast majority of the value we're creating to come from improving the quality of management or just installing any level of professional management, right? We want to find those units that are leased for $1,000 a month that should be $1,500 a month in their current condition, because that's very easy value to extract versus having to get in there and actually throw a GC at a project. Now, I want to share 4 very specific attributes of these Holy Grail deals that you can very clearly look at and define and check a box, etc., when you're evaluating deals. Number 1, we want to look for deals that require minimal systems or exterior, and in another way to put this, non-value add CapEx, right? We want to find deals that don't require a lot of that type of CapEx and a significant spend from a construction standpoint on those items. And we want to find deals that require mainly interior in the unit CapEx, because that is what we define as value add CapEx. Another way to think about this, we want to find a property that's owned by an owner who has maybe owned it for a long time and hasn't been forced or incentivized to keep bringing those rents right to market over that period of time in terms of how long they've owned it, but they have maintained the property well physically, right? Those are 2 different things. There's a lot of owners out there who've owned a piece of real estate for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, signed some leases, they let them just, we have some long-term residents. Maybe they're increasing them, but they're only increasing 2 or 3% a year, but rents have grown 4 or 5%. And over time, those rents have lagged behind where the market is. But along the length of ownership, they've maintained the grounds well. They've replaced the roofs. They've replaced some heating systems. They've done the siding. They've done some windows. And they've maintained the property well physically. That's number 1. That's the biggest indication of a deal here. Again, minimal systems or non-value add CapEx. And again, I should define that. We define value add CapEx as dollars that you spend that clearly impact the rents that you can ask for the unit. Greatest example of that is interior CapEx, in the unit CapEx, I should say. Common area CapEx, common hallways, common flooring, any amenity spaces. Landscaping, well, that's not interior, that's going to add value to a property. Examples of CapEx that is not value add: heating systems, cooling systems, roofs, siding. Although siding you could have an argument there because it does increase the curb appeal, maybe makes the community more desirable. You could charge a little bit more. Sure. Foundation, plumbing and electrical, stuff that's behind the walls that a tenant can't see. That stuff doesn't necessarily drive rents. That's just money that you're spending in order to keep the building operating in a functional way. So again, number 1, we want to find deals that have mainly value add, which we define as interior CapEx, but there's some kind of misalignment from a management standpoint. Rents are low, they're not doing a great job, etc. Number 2, a deal that has poor management quality. And again, this is similar to the first item in that management quality does impact a rent roll. But again, poor management quality can take just many different forms. Could be poor collections, could be poor tenant screening, could be they're just not doing a good job of leasing. They're not posting on the right websites. They take bad pictures. They don't write a correct description. They only show the units to prospective residents 1 or 2 days a week, and it's hard for them to actually get people through. They don't answer maintenance calls quickly, right? Maintenance issues, that's a big one. So we want to identify the quality of management at the property level right now and see if there's stuff that we can do better. If they're managed by a great local professional third-party PM that's well-respected in the marketplace, well, that tells us something, right? The performance of the property right now is probably what it's going to be moving forward, outside of if we take, some kind of drastic measures and changing how it's being run, or we're doing, again, more construction-heavy CapEx that changes the community materially. But in general, we want to identify poor management quality. And if we stack that with the first screening tool, where there's mainly interior CapEx, mainly value-add CapEx required, and ideally not a ton of it, and that's combined with poor management quality, now we're really starting to get somewhere. Number 3, We want to see, we're always looking for deals that have low rents, but with an asterisk. Everybody knows we like to see low rents in the value add real estate game, of course, but we want to see low rents, but a current resident base that aligns with the class of the property, or at least the desired class in terms of how we're looking to run it. So an example of this as it relates to value add multifamily deals, that can be the inverse of that, or, slightly different. I shouldn't say the inverse, it's slightly different. There's a lot of situations where they're leasing a, Class C property, maybe from a construction standpoint, maybe in terms of the quality of the residents living there, in a Class B neighborhood, in a neighborhood that would justify higher rents, a higher quality of tenant. Now, you still have to get in there, and you still have to turn the resident base over, and oftentimes that can be a little bit more of a challenging adventure because value add operators know this. If you are bringing a Class B residence into a Class C community, there's a misalignment in the neighbors there, right? There may be some more some challenges internally. You may have a harder time leasing the actual community to that Class B resident because the community has a reputation locally as maybe not that type of property. And even if you're renovating the interior of the unit nicely, there may still be a vibe or just a situation there in which you have a hard time leasing those units. Now, an example of a holy grail deal, that perfect deal that we love to find, you got a bunch of Class B residents. The current class of resident is who you are going to be marketing your units to when one comes vacant, but they just, their rents are low, right? And you just got to work them up, and they can stay at the property. You can work them up over time. Now, the value here is you don't have to worry about there being challenges from a neighbor standpoint. And you also can organically work with the legacy residents to bring them to market instead of having to turn those units or a large segment of the community in general, which I think is very important to know. Number 4, in terms of how we define these holy grail deals, a property that has no fees or other income, where the vast majority, call it, 97, 100% of their revenue is coming from just renting the units, and they're not charging pet fees or storage fees or parking fees, or they're not charging laundry, or they're undercharging for coin-op laundry. All of the different things are on the edges in which we can generate revenue by charging in the multifamily business. We always talk about it on this podcast, but revenue drops straight to the bottom line, typically, right? And that's a very broad statement, but the vast majority of your expenses in multifamily are fixed. So 80% of successful multifamily operations is managing a revenue, minimizing vacancy, maximizing income in terms of rental rates and fees and other services. So if we can come in and quickly implement that, quickly allow pets and charge a pet fee and make it pet friendly, and we charge some other types of fees as it relates to storage or parking or stuff like that, that's typically revenue, again, that drops straight to the bottom line. And it's a very easy way to change. It's just a very easy way to optimize your NOI quickly in the property, because it's, again, oftentimes you're not adding services here or spending CapEx to build out some type of services. Maybe you're spending CapEx to build storage units or something like that. But again, that's value add spend, which is what we like. Those are typically the 4 lenses in which we're viewing deals to quickly see if it's a holy grail deal. A holy grail deal I define as one that meets all 4 of these classifications, and that's a deal that we know that we can get very aggressive when we pursue it, because of the fact that we're on a risk adjusted basis. Let me put it this way: the returns on a risk adjusted standpoint make far more sense than equivalent returns in a deal that requires significant CapEx spend, and we're turning over a resident base, basically more of a heavy value add type of deal. Now, hard to find these deals. That's why we do all of our direct to seller marketing. That's why we do everything we can to go actually get in front of these folks and to negotiate deals with the seller directly, so we increase the chances we can find these. But when we do find them, we get extremely excited about them because they typically have a higher floor in terms of a bearish case for how that deal is going to perform than one where we're spending a lot of money on CapEx or having to work through a very significant managerial change at the property from a resident-based standpoint. So again, to recap, minimal systems CapEx, mainly interior value-add CapEx required, poor management quality, and again, that can be defined as collections, the leasing process, the maintenance process. Number 3, low rents, but a tenant base that aligns with who we are going to target when we're leasing our vacant units, so we don't have to turn over the tenant base. And then number 4, no fees or other income or ancillary income being charged or sourced at the property, or generated, I should say, not sourced. So that's how we define the Holy Grail deal in our business. Again, if you want to learn more about Sterling Realty Apartments, which actually is It literally checks off all 4 boxes here. It literally checks. It's a 4 for 4 in terms of the scope of that deal and the attributes of that deal. Click the link in the show notes to be taken to the deal room to download all of the documentation we have on it and to participate if you are interested and you are an accredited investor. And again, if you haven't left the podcast a rating and a review yet, but you've been a listener and you've learned anything, you've taken anything away from the podcast feed, please take 5 seconds. It literally takes 5 seconds. Scroll down on iTunes or Spotify, click 5 stars. Much appreciated by myself and the team who works really hard to put these episodes together. So that's all. Thank you all for listening, and catch you guys on the next episode.